webinar on how to improve leadership and communication skills for your child. My name's Christy. I'm the founder of Bizibuz. We're the largest after-school activities marketplace in Hong Kong. When you think of leadership skills in kids, you probably think of them being on the student council or leading a Minecraft club at school. But actually, developing leadership skills can apply to any child, no matter what council or club they join. These are qualities of inspiring others and guiding a group towards a common goal, requiring empathy, self-confidence, and independence. And developing leadership skills also cultivates critical thinking and decision-making abilities, resiliency, integrity, teamwork. And these are all really, really critical things in terms of not just school performance and exam performance, but obviously success in life and career. Our expert guest today to lead us through how to help develop these skills of leadership in children is Vannessa Misso-Veness. Vannessa is well known among students and parents from Chinese International School, Hong Kong International School, IMS, SISHK, AISHK, Nord Anglia, to name a few. She's more than 20 years of teaching and training experience and is the founder of the education centre Cascade Train Teach Learn. She has trained teachers from international schools and prepared teachers for TESOL, English language certification. She's also what's known as a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. And we'll get into that in a little bit, which is an international recognized qualification. And finally, she's also an official exam grader for the IB Diploma Programme and IELTS. And she is trained in the latest grading methodology for exams such as IB CSE, the IB Diploma and IELTS exams. Before we dive in though, I think it would be really helpful if we just take a poll to understand from you which age group we should focus on. So whether or not you're focused on more pre-primary, primary or secondary leadership skill development. And also it would be helpful to know the extent of Cantonese support that might be required. So if you could go on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a triangle, a square, and a circle. If you click on that, and then you navigate up to polls, I'm just launching the first poll, so you should be able to vote on that. And I'll launch the second poll as well. So if you could please just cast your votes, you should all be able to see the votes as they come in. Then that would be really helpful. In particular on the language support, we don't want to waste time if people are comfortable with English. Okay, great. Okay, so it sounds like, Vannessa, we should spend a little bit more time on pre-primary, but still we do have parents on from primary and secondary. So I think we'll have to cover the full range. And then luckily no one actually needs Cantonese support. So Chloe, it looks like you can sit back and enjoy the webinar. Fantastic. So just one more housekeeping matter before we get started. You'll notice that there's a chat button. So that is actually basically a square with horizontal lines, the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to stick a question in this chat area at any point in time. We'll monitor the chat area just in case you have something that you want to pose to Vannessa. She can address it in real time. And we'll just keep reminding you, you can put your questions in this chat area at any point. So Vannessa, why don't we start by having you introduce yourself in your own words, and maybe you can help explain what a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner does, because I'm sure this must inform your perspective on how you actually develop leadership skills in kids.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you to Bizibuz for having me here today, and Christy for that lovely welcome. All right. So as Christy said, I've been in education for more than 20 years. And over this period of time, Christy, I've seen changes to the education system, but not very much, mind you. And that's why I am where I am today. But the pressures on children have just been mounting. So as a parent myself, I just looked at it and thought, there must be a better way, right? of supporting children and supporting parents. So that's when I did, besides my qualifications in teaching, NLP. That's what it's called, neuro-linguistic programming. So what is it about? Some people say it's wishy-washy and, it's all about hypnotizing people. Well, it's not. Together with my neuroscience coaching, what I've learned is, and why I actually got into it, is I wanted to learn about how we think as people, as human beings, how we actually learn. How can we make learning something that sticks for us? And through these, then I thought about how can I support parents and children through their learning process? So what is neuro-linguistic programming? What is neuroscience? It's about studying the brain. And now we have so much of information about how we actually have two parts to our brain called the conscious and the subconscious mind, and how we actually put a lot of things and learn a lot of things as we're growing up into our subconscious. And that is actually kind of driving us in the way we interact with people, the way we learn, the way we do things in our lives. And with young children or children all the way to secondary, if we actually could target the way we think and help children be in control of their minds and not let the minds control them all the time, wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't it be fantastic if we could really say, now it's really me kind of achieving what I want to achieve because I can control how I think and how I feel. And so that's what I do. Besides focusing on English, we try to blend these two in so children have a better sort of learning journey. And parents are also empowered during our coaching sessions with them, Christy. And today, actually, to understand it all a little bit better, I prepared some slides and I can walk us through this idea of what is leadership and how do we go about helping children achieve some of these goals and prepare them for academic excellence.
That would be great if you could share your materials.
Yes, I will do that now. All right. So, all good?
Yes.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so simply put, I want to continue with this. Now we have this in front of us. We've seen this out, on social media a lot. So carrying this little phrase, believe in yourself, I want to turn this NLP and neuroscience a little bit into another form. So simply put, if we know how a car works, we can use it more effectively, efficiently, and we won't waste money on fuel, and we know how to maneuver it. If we actually know how the human mind works, then we can actually use it as a useful model for ourselves. Then we can actually believe in ourselves to achieve our goal. So that's what I'm saying here. And that's why I feel that if we can empower these future leaders so that they can actually hold on to their beliefs in their minds and use their understanding of how they are thinking, we could actually go very, very far. So today, let's start with this. Today's children are the leaders of tomorrow. I know we've seen this countless times. Christy, could I ask those who are online to actually just put it in the chat box? What does this phrase mean to them? Today's children are the leaders of tomorrow. And if you could just read me out a few of the things that everyone's saying. What do you think this phrase means?
So for me, I have two kids. I have a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. I think that it means that they need to be innovators and proactive and problem solvers. And they need to be able to inspire others and develop, have a vision and be able to persuade and convince others. So I think all of these aspects in terms of being a leader of tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, so you've got I've got some very good words from you there, Christy, and we'll come back to those words later. Now, obviously, when we think of leaders, some of us also think about someone who's like a CEO or someone's running a big company, standing out front. But actually, I believe that every kid has the potential to lead. He does not, or she does not, or they don't have to stand in front of a big group and own a big company, because leadership boils down to many more things that we'll discover today. And we've seen, sorry, Christy, do we have some?
We have one more comment. So
yes.
Charlene has contributed, they'll inherit a world with problems that we haven't considered.
Oh, yes, exactly. And every generation, we see that accumulate. having to carry the burden of the previous in terms of environment, social, economic, definitely, Charlene, definitely. So let's look at all these things with the problems that we have. How can we prepare our children for that future that they're going to, the unseen future, right? That's what our future is. The future does not exist at the moment as we are speaking. So I think the key for me here is that if you look at leaders, many successful leaders come from a variety of backgrounds, but all of them have been mentored in one way or another. They've had coaches, parents, teachers, somebody there to guide them with the direction, with the language that can spur them on. And as a parent, I'm a parent myself, so I'm talking, I'm sure, to parents here today. And as a parent, I feel that we have the opportunity every day to actually mold our children to be that future leaders, to take on what the world is going to give them and instill these leadership traits. So at the beginning, we are the ones, we are the hands that rock the cradle, rule the world in that sense. We are going to instill in them. And that's a very important message I have for each of us today, is that we play a part in every child's life that we come across, that we meet, because we are adults. We're supposed to have better understanding of the way we should communicate, we interact, and the way we say things to each other. So developing leadership. Let's look at some of the, today I have 6 easy ways. Easy. I say easy, but they are there. 6 ways I believe that would help a child become more empowered, and also you as a parent to empower you. Because I too, as a parent, would like to feel empowered, right? And to know that I'm doing the right thing. So what can we do? 1, empowering our children. All right, so sometimes I feel that I forget that our children are actually people. They're not just little ones. They're people too, with their own thoughts, their own emotions. They're struggling to manage who they are. And as they become preteens and teens, trying to get the brain and the body to come in some sort of nice sync so they feel confident out there. But as we remember our children are unique individuals, what does that mean for them? It means we give them the opportunity to actually voice their thoughts, to be part of problem solving, decision making at home. They can have their say. Yes, of course, to a certain limit, because their world is very narrow. They don't see all the consequences around them or all the other factors. But starting small means we actually build into our children the desire to be part of this decision making, their desire to problem solve, because they know there are ways out. And if we can't see a way, there will be a way out if we put our minds together. So one of the things we do and part of our programs is that we believe that in order to teach a child, let's say for English is where our focus is, we're not just going to teach a child English all the way. We know that through critical thinking and creative writing programs, we can actually put in our leadership skills. We empower them. We give them a chance to voice their opinions, their thoughts, but also being mindful of the people around them, building empathy, so that when they're actually sharing their thoughts and opinions, they're thinking about, oh, you know, I must choose the right words in how I present my ideas and my thoughts. So those with children who are in primary, I would say this is the best time to empower your children. Get them involved in little things that you do at home as a family. Now, example I have is, for example, a bedtime routine. You could ask your children, what would they like to do, you know, part of a bedtime routine. Of course, certain things could be non-negotiable. They have to brush their teeth or they may have to have a shower. But in between, it could be, would you like to have your milk first and then the story, or the story first and then your milk? So we kind of give them a say to feel that they are part of this growing, to be part of a human in the community, is a part to actually play a part in decision making, right? Another thing, when parents sometimes come to me and say, you know, my child doesn't eat vegetables, or I can't negotiate with him. I don't know what to say to him when it comes to vegetables. Actually, the bigger the fuss we make, the worse it gets. So when my daughter was young, I've learned simple things like, if you want them to say yes, put options in front of them and they choose from the options. Tomatoes, carrots, cucumber. Choose 2 that you like today. Give them that choice. Then we're building good habits. What has eating got to do with learning? A lot. because through eating, we know that our children will be healthier, they'll be full, and then the brain will function better. But they're also teaching them opportunities to make decisions. So empower them. The more your child is empowered, actually, the more they will feel confident in the way they're speaking. Now, one very important thing that's always come up when I speak to parents is they believe that leaders are communicators. I agree with you. But this is kind of like the popular belief that the leader has to be standing in front, talking to everybody, and everybody's listening to him, her, or they in front of the audience. Well, I really feel that the world is changing. And this is what leaders are today. They're sitting in their teams, they're talking, they're leading teams, they're actually communicating, because it's the foundation for all relationships. Can you think of any situation besides you not being alone and not looking at your phone where you don't communicate? I'm sure you can't. It's hard. Even if you're by yourself, you have thoughts going through your mind because you're communicating with yourself. Your thoughts will affect your body, your emotions, the way you respond later to people. So communication is key. And again, here lies a lesson. You're always talking to your kids. You're always telling them what to do, nagging them of what to do. But if we start empowering our children and doing little things along the way, modeling to them that the way we communicate, our tone, things we say can affect the person listening to you. And if your child doesn't get it, show them how that tone of voice can affect somebody else, how somebody can agree and disagree just because of the way they said something. So one of the things I've come across as an educator when it comes to students is when we talk about communication, many of them do not like presentation. They shy away from it. They stand in front, they're terrified, or they just bend down and read from their notes without paying attention to the audience. This is indeed something they can learn, right? It's a skill. I'm sure not every one of us are outgoing. We feel confident in front of a group of people. But today, we're out there, we're meeting people, they're online talking to friends. There's so many opportunities for our children to learn this communication skill. And to be a good presenter, a good communicator would also mean that they will have people listening to them. And that's what a leader wants, that people listen to you, consider your thoughts, consider your opinions, consider your plans. And then they will come on board with you, because a leader also has to be convincing. And to be convincing is not just what you say, is how you say it. Are you backed? Are you confident? So as a parent, these are a couple of points that I feel are really, really important. But I'll go on. There are 4 more that I'd like to share with you, as I said. But let's remember, communication is not just about writing and speaking, right? What I found that's really troubling is that for 3 years that we were actually in mask, a lot of the younger ones, maybe parents with younger children might notice this. Younger children, when they're 3, so now they're 4, 5, 6, they had trouble actually recognizing emotions because our faces were covered up. So I've worked with younger children trying to break through this. And we've done reading, and we've looked at pictures, and we've looked at emotions of people. And I said, can you tell if this person is happy or sad? Or how do you think they're feeling? And those kids had trouble because we were masked. So communicating through non-verbal gestures like our facial expressions, our body language is also very important. And it's key. I mean, you don't want your child to be a confident speaker in front of you, but sorry? Is everything all right?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
Vannessa, yes.
Someone say something. Okay, so we won't want children to be standing in front, not being able to gauge a room and just going on, and the audience turns away because they've not bought into your message, because you were not reading the room. So being a leader is being able to communicate the basics like eye contact, looking at people, but also reading people's expressions and body language is really, really important. So what we've done is noticing these things. We've also put a package together to help children become more confident, really hands-on practice, from simple fun presentations to bigger researched presentations, so that when they're standing in front of a small group, a big team, they're confident when they get into the workplace, and they won't shy away to actually say, hey, I'm volunteering to lead the group, right?
Vannessa,
Now,
I
yes.
actually have a quick question on this.
Sure.
communication skills and how
Yes.
the parent you can influence your kids. Because I think, you know, what I see in some kids, and certainly my own, is that they're confident talkers, but they're not great at listening. And I feel like that's yet another area that's also important, whether or not you're standing up in front of a crowd because you have to read the room, but also to actually truly, I think, be viewed as someone with, you know, leadership integrity, need to be working in teams and listening to other people. But if you've got little chatterboxes, how do you teach that to a child? How do you teach them to actually listen, stop talking, listen a bit?
Yes, Chrissy, that's a good question because it leads me on to what I wanted to talk about, teamwork and collaboration. So I'll answer your question now. If I work in mini groups, and yes, there will be a child who's always wanting to chat, always wanting to support, I praise the child for their contribution. I go, it's lovely that you have a lot to contribute and you have very good ideas, but at this moment, shall we, I like to include myself, shall we give the others a chance to also show their brilliant ideas and their clever answers, okay? And then you and I will both listen and think about what they've said. That's one thing I've used in the classroom. Another thing is a child that doesn't want to listen, I mini task. Let's listen for a short period of time. If it doesn't have to be you telling them or giving instruction, it could be reading from a text. I'm going to read a short passage. I'm going to quiz you. Shall we have a game? All right, I'm going to read it. And they practice active listening. And then you can ask questions. They go, you did really well in that 5 minutes. The next time I'm going to challenge you for 10. And then children realize that, yeah, I have to be listening in order to get the information, in order to get the quiz right. Then I feel we all survive on this praise. We love praise. Human beings love praise. Children love praise. So let's praise. Let's do that. But it always takes, and this is a very important thing, Christy, is that all these little things build up over time. So when we have a little child and they're 3, 4, practicing all this till they leave the nest, and then hopefully they have the skills because they'll be practicing it in school too. Maybe when they're not listening to it in school, the teacher will say, John, do you mind? Samantha's speaking. So teachers are there to reinforce as well. So we are just reinforcing all the time through different stakeholders in the child's life. I hope that answers your question, Christy.
Yes, absolutely. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. So you can find the chat just by going to the square that has horizontal lines on your lower right-hand side of the screen. So just, you can type out a message there, a question there if you have anything for Vannessa. So please.
Right. So this really works well into what I think a next kind of skill that a child should have is teamwork and collaboration. Now, you hear children say, oh, I've got to work with so-and-so on this project. We're going to do a presentation. And teamwork is so important because that's the foundation for their communication. They're going to have, you do this. They learn to delegate. They learn to say, no, we're not going to do that. This one looks better. Lots go on in the team. I'm sure if we're all adults here, we've worked in teams before. We know how tricky it can be, but we know how, when good teams click and work together, how effective they will be at the end. So for children to work in the team, obviously in a classroom, for example, the teacher needs to be able to set up good teams, lay the foundation for rules, and manage. Again, a teacher working with the students is the teachers learning about each child as well. Each child is learning about their group members and themselves. Lots of learning going on in our lives every day. How am I managing myself? How am I managing my team members? How am I listening to them? Can I incorporate those ideas? And out of this teamwork, out of communication, what we often get in any team pair work is we will come across conflict without fail, right? It could be small, it could be huge, this conflict. And this is another skill that children need to have, conflict resolution. How many of us as parents are guilty to just pull 2 children aside and just end it? No more playing, that's it. And then
well, to defend parents generally, I do find that like one child naturally will blame the other, and then the other one blames the other.
Definitely.
It's difficult to arbitrate.
Even at work, we'll be like wanting to push the blame to somebody. It's about accepting accountability for things that go wrong. So one thing I've learned during my coaching training as well as working with kids is at that moment, No one can be reasoned with, a child or an adult, if they're angry or they're emotional. We've got to separate them, let them cool down. So one of the things I'm going to do today is I'm going to share some of these steps with you, all right? So the SSTCR that I tend to use is, if a child continues this kind of conflict and there's tension and they're pulling things from each other and they can't function. So if I'm in a class and there's 6 and 2 of them are doing this, obviously this disrupts the whole teaching atmosphere, but it also disrupts the dynamic of the lesson. So what would I do? Quickly, if 4 kids are working, I'll take 2 aside, but I've got to separate them. And this is where we need to allow we got to stop the thing that's getting them out of control. It could be the Lego, it could be a pencil, simple things that trigger. But we know that that is the trigger. It is not the cause. But children find it hard to articulate what's the cause. Then in schools, most schools will have protocols for this when they're big, he said, I said. Take them aside and have conversations with each child. So as a parent, you are practicing active listening. You're listening. Why, for example, John is unhappy. What's happened? Let John have his say without interrupting. You know, you kind of pull out the main ideas. Then you got to talk to the other child. What made you unhappy? So we are picking up the main things. Once they're calmer, again, it is not easy. I say this, bringing them together, 2 young children, and you say, okay, both of you were not happy because you wanted the red brick and he wanted the red brick. All right, what can we do now in order for us to share that red brick? So we've got to then say, the second S is say what we can do. So stop, calmer, say what we can do. Each of us, what can we do? And once each kid gives a solution, then we have to kind of, the next one is think. Think about these solutions, what can be done. And when they both agree, choose the solution that they both agree on. And finally, the R is respect that decision. All right. We, even as adults, some of the things we will drop along the way. We may agree, but we may not do it. So as much as you're working with children, you feel frustrated, take a step back and also ask yourself, do I often keep to all my resolutions? I often don't too. So with children, we also have to give them a little bit of leeway because they're managing how they feel. But just to sum up, stop, separate them, calm, talk about what's bothering them. Let's come together. Let's think about things, options. Choose an option together and respect the option that we have. All right. And it works well in classrooms. But what will work well? All of us work well when things are consistent. So consistency. If you are practicing this method, you know, you got to also see that your spouse is practicing it, that your helpers at home are trying to do the same kind of conflict resolution as you are.
This is the hardest thing, I feel.
It is the hardest thing. I agree with you. What I've done is for myself, because my daughter used to have this kind of meltdown because she didn't like being in front of the class, the first one. So I actually approached the teacher and I said, look, at home, we are practicing this. We use terms like bring your elevator down. And when you're calmer, I will talk to you. So I said to the teacher, if you see this happen, just say to her, bring your elevator down and put her aside and say, I'll come back to you, so that the whole class will not be disrupted. Because as an educator, I know how that feels. Teachers, I know, you know, you got to have 30 students, 30 parents may have different ways, but have that conversation too, because the teachers are also there. They too want to have less conflict in their class. They want to know how to work with that child. Now, one of these things that parents have come to me and say, okay, you know, I can't work with my own child. It's so difficult. They won't listen to me. So that's why I found that my coaching and the coaching packages that we've put together is to help parents, to support them, to empower them. This is what we can do together. Try this at home and let's see what works for you. Because to be honest, there's no one perfect way, right?
No, that's true.
There's no one. It's about the personality, you, how long can you stay on this? It's like you and them. Who's going to give up first, right? One of the things, yes, sorry, Chrissy.
Sorry to interrupt. I actually have one more question here, and maybe a suggestion for parents. In conflict resolution for younger kids, I think for pre-primary and primary, are you familiar with Kelso's choices?
Sorry, say that with?
it's a program, and I think you can get some information about it online. It's called Kelso's Choices. Kelso. He's a little frog, and basically it's associated with a program where there's basically a spinner, and then on that spinner there are a number of different alternative reactions that a child can choose in terms of how to resolve a conflict. Things like, and they're much more about empowering the two children to try to resolve the conflict amongst themselves as well, as opposed to relying on a parent or an educator to step in and manage. And I think this is quite good because this is also empowering the kids to feel like they have possibilities to explore, to try to manage the situation. And so there are things like try to make a deal or walk away or, blah, blah, blah. And so I think maybe that might be of interest to parents for early years and primary. But I also wanted to ask for secondary. I think secondary, do you deal with those sorts of situations differently? Do you advise parents differently? Because I think the stakes involved can be somewhat different.
Yes, stakes are different.
So I was wondering if you had any advice on that front, because we do have some parents with secondary kids.
So Kelso has built it based upon, obviously all the research about how conflict resolution is, right? Make a deal, walk away. All those options are what we kind of use when you have conflict resolution. So it's great with that little spinner when you're not there in the room and children find it hard. When it comes to students in secondary school, because they're teens, this conflict is really much deeper because it goes into the identity. So it goes with the teens wanting to showcase their identity. They're wanting to showcase their independence. And having a stand-up conflict where we're both shouting is not going to work, really, because all we're doing at that point is pushing the teen away. So what do? Well, from experience, I've got a teen now. So it's best, I find, for me to walk away from the situation and let my daughter calm down. Then when she's calmer, and I'm calmer, to be honest, so that we both, our body language does not reflect and our energy does not reflect anger, is to go in. And if I actually made a mistake in the way I responded to her, I apologize. And I say, sorry for sounding really angry just now. I am now calmer and I'm ready to listen to you. Are you calmer and can we speak now? So I asked permission to enter her personal space because, when we are angry, our energy is kind of smaller. We want to keep closer. So to enter that space means you're getting closer to that person. And so then we can have that conversation. I need to understand. So when we do a lot of conscious parenting sessions with parents, I need to understand myself as a parent. What drives me? What ticks me off? What are my pet peeves? And when I see that and it's being triggered by my own child, I know I've got to calm down. I've got to bring my elevator down because I need to understand what makes me upset because my child may not be meeting my values and my thoughts. And so those are interesting things. So when it comes to conflict resolution, to be honest, when it was teenagers, I started learning about myself first because teens just really seem to have, we were there once. They really want to be their own persons. But in order to achieve that, they're trying to figure out their values and who they are and how far they can go. And they can only do that if I'm willing to let my daughter explore. So as I said again, conscious parenting was a really great workshop for me to go through and work with parents. So I hope that answered a little bit of what you were saying.
Yeah.
When it comes to younger children, what I've really found that worked with when it comes to conflict resolution is as a family to play games together. No one likes losing. So that's a great time, a lesson in there to talk about how you face up to your losing. What are your emotions you have? And as well, when my daughter was younger, we actually failed certain things, we purposely lost so that we could show her, oh, I lost it. It's not so great, but the key is modeling. And I'll come to that a little bit later as well. As parents, we need to show them what we want. We can't say I want, but we don't show. How are you going to know what it is that I want if you can't show me exactly what it is, right? So, but what I'm saying is that a leader is not emotionless. I mean, you don't have to be all under control, but a leader knows when to use what emotions and how to kind of convey what they need to convey at that period of time. We all have emotions. We can't run from them. The best is to acknowledge that we are angry, we are sad. Acknowledging is, I think, the key. We shouldn't make children feel embarrassed for feeling angry. We shouldn't make children feel that to cry is not a great thing. We all have emotions, do it, and then we manage it as we treat them later. Now, another thing I found that what really makes a great leader is going out there, children being inspired, seeing other people doing things. And one of it is to spend time with, as a family, contributing to the community, because a leader is not within just in your own circle. If you want your child to excel in school, at work, we know they need to go out there. They need to experience the world. But why have I put these 3 people here is because I feel that I think in the past 10, 15 years, we are now turning away from just modeling adults for children. Yes, it's nice to do adults, but you know what? When a child is 5, 10, even 12, an adult that's 30, 40, 50 seems very old to them, right? They're like, yeah, they're old people, how do I connect with them? So with the internet, it's been amazing. So these 3 people, let's talk about these 3 people and how they've changed lives. For example, the La Chapelle on the left. What he did was he created this robotic arm out of Lego. And then he met disabled people who needed arms but couldn't afford the expensive prosthetics. So out there, he's a young guy. He went out there, he used 3D printing, and he's created a prosthetic arm only for $350 US. So people who couldn't afford that could have quality of life. I think he was hardly 20 when he came across that. Now we have Zurel, right there in the middle. What did she do? She stood up for women and girls, advocating for schools for them in Africa. And she'd been out there going to families, talking to them and saying, this is why you have to send your daughters to school. And she was a teenager herself when she did this. And the last one is we have Anne. And Anne was 15 when she created that little thing that you see in her hand. It's actually a torchlight powered by our body heat. How amazing is that? Some kids may laugh at that and they go, what? It won't last long. But talk about this. Talk about not everyone has electricity in their home. Not everyone is lucky enough to turn on the light and there's electricity or can buy batteries. So what she's created is in third world countries and in homes where people can't afford electricity, they have the torchlight. Inspire our children. Be out there with them. Use examples that they can relate to. So children, peers closer to their age. Because when they're inspired, you see amazing things happen in our children, haven't you? You've seen them. If they like something, they go for it and they do it really well. But I've spoken to you about being inspired, about being a leader, about empowering our children. These are all wonderful things. But the key thing that our children should have is self-leadership and goal setting. So all these things are bombarding our children, right? And we have to teach our children, how can I take care of myself, understand my emotions, lead myself? What does that mean? So as I talked about conscious parenting and how as a parent, I needed to know my values, my goals, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what were my triggers when when I'm communicating. Same thing with teenagers and children. We can start them young. We can start them setting simple goals for ourselves. All right, Clara, she's 5, she's coming home from kindergarten. What shall we do this afternoon? Shall we, you want to build, all right, you want to build a tower of bricks. Let's do that. That's our goal for today. And then after that, so we're setting small things. Teenagers come home, in middle school especially, they're learning how to negotiate being that tween schoolwork. A planner is great. Sit down. This is how we plan. If we don't achieve your goals, it's fine. You're not a failure. Words that avoid are failure, don't, can't, lazy. I don't like these words because they're easy words to project onto somebody else. I didn't meet the deadline. Let's look at what we can do to meet future deadlines. My daughter comes home. I didn't do well in Chinese. I did really badly. I look, and in my opinion, I don't think it's bad, but I say to her, why do you feel that this is not a good score? She said, I studied hard, but I didn't get. So I say to her, what would you like to achieve? And how can you achieve it? Mind you, I have to remind myself of these questions before I speak to her too. And that's why I have parents who come to me and we go through this coaching program about what are sets of questions that you can use as a parent to ask your child without sounding negative, judgmental, especially preteens and teens, because they already feel the whole world is against them as they adjust to feel like an adult. Teach our children to set goals, to achieve goals, and then to reflect. One of the things that what I like about the IB program is that it teaches children, teens, to actually reflect about their study. And once we show our children how they can reflect upon goal setting, what worked, what didn't work, being a reflective leader is really, really important, I think, right? I want to ask you, how many of you set goals in the beginning of the new year? Oh, I'm going to lose weight. Oh, I'm going to run a marathon. Oh, I'm going to wake up early and do this. And by second or third month, we're like, oh, we dwindle and we can't keep up with it because sometimes our goals are too big and not achievable. Sometimes we just lose motivation. So what I'm saying here is that sometimes we just have to understand our children that all this pressure that we put upon those little shoulders that they have is overwhelming. And if we can achieve certain things, let's listen to them. Let's also show active listening as a parent. What overwhelmed them and what couldn't make, why couldn't they achieve what they wanted to achieve? Why did they give up playing the guitar when they really wanted to? Talk it through. And I think conversation is between children, parents, and the family creates a communicator that thinks for themselves, a communicator who can actually say how they feel and then think about what I can do to get it done better, right? So if you notice, lots of things, all the 6 skills I feel that a child as young as, from the time they're born, you're teaching them lots of things. Your tone of voice, you're teaching them to make decisions all the way to teenage and adulthood. The bottom line, Christy, is that we are surrounded by people, aren't we? We may retreat into our own little space every now and then, but we come out into the world and we're constantly surrounded by people, whether we're on our phones, whether we're in a classroom, whether we're in a webinar, whether we're in a meeting, on a bus, we're constantly around people. So the bottom line, I feel, is that by exposing our children to leadership skills that I mentioned earlier, underlying all this is communication. We can't run from this. It all boils down to this word. The way we think, we're communicating with ourselves. Then we express what we think to others. So this is constantly going on. Now, parents also ask me, okay, so I send my child for presentation skills with you, or we teach them to be more confident in speaking or solving problems, but how does that prepare them for the exams? Well, let's look at this way. When your child is in school, and they're preparing for exams, IGCSE, SATs, MAP, IB. What are they doing? Before they walk into the exam hall, they're actually communicating with the teacher. What they understand and what they don't understand. That's key, isn't it? You want your child to be asking the teacher, can you help me with this problem? I don't know how to solve it. I don't understand this concept. Communicating. Now, they may be working in pairs and studying in pairs. You want it to be effective instead of them chatting and jabbering away. Communication. So you solved that essay, you wrote that essay, I don't understand it. So you get their buddy to explain it to them. Communicating. They walk into the exam hall. They are writing for hours. They're communicating. They're trying to express their thoughts onto paper eloquently, effectively. That's how they're going to get the score that they want, right? So, and also we've prepared students for interviews when they want to enter public schools in the UK, entrance exams in Hong Kong. Interview, face-to-face interview skills are so important. How many times we've seen children shy away, not want to make eye contact, looking down, fiddling because they're nervous. But this is a journey to build confidence. It doesn't happen like you sign up for 3 interview skills and done, your child is confident. Confidence comes from us, the parents, the educators around them, the way we speak to them the way they're given opportunities to speak, right? So how do we teach all this in our classroom, in a leadership class, for example, Christy? When we run leadership classes, there are more hands-on activities, scenarios, role-playing games and activities. And then we actually set problems for them to work through as a team. And solving the problem is not the end-all and be-all in our leadership. I can't say, I'm tongue-tied, leadership course. What we do is actually reflection at the end. And this is what I really feel is important. Let's reflect about how you worked as a team. What went well as a team when you were talking to, Sam? How did Sam respond? Did you like that? I saw the body language. Walk that through. What helped you all work well as a team? What made the presentation successful in your opinion? Reflection is so important. Each day, if we can reflect upon what happened in school, in our lives, what we did well, what we could do better, imagine how enlightened we wake up each day to say, then you can do it better. Instead of just saying, I want to be better, but how do we be better? So that's what we do in our leadership courses. And in our writing class, you think, how do we build leadership skills in there? Well, in writing classes, there are lots of discussion going on between teacher and student and student and student. So you see how students work. There's an opportunity to resolve conflict. As Chrissy, you said earlier, build active listening to each other, working together. They're constantly communicating ideas. What I say to you, have you understood what I said? When they're writing, that's where they're putting down their thoughts, their ideas, trying to write descriptive stories, trying to write argumentative essays. It comes out in the different form. And the leadership is they're building their own understanding of self and how to organize what they have, their ideas, organizing their writing, building up, researching. These are great skills that the leader should have, right?
So sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering though, in your writing classes, I know you have them for different age groups, so maybe it depends on the age of the child, but how much are you focusing on, for example, specific writing skills that help with exam performance, like structure of an essay or grammar or, developing vocab, versus maybe developing critical thinking skills that can help the quality of the content a child communicates via writing? Can you maybe explain a little bit more about how you balance that?
Yes. So I think there's no magic, but seriously, with 20 years of experience working, I find that I can do that in the classroom, and my teachers are trained to do that, right? So what we do is, overall, is the objective of that lesson is to produce, for example, let's take a middle school student, and they've come to do writing, analytical writing of a particular topic that we may have, right? So topic discussions going on. Now, in that process of discussing in order to brainstorm, that's already a leadership skill that you're teaching. Listen to each other, right? Listening, good. Next step, make notes. Note-taking is something a lot of students don't like doing these days because they have the computer, they don't want to write by hand, writing stamina is decreasing. Annotate, make notes, because when we walk away, we don't remember everything. So now, in that lesson of writing, we're teaching them certain lifelong skills of annotating and note-taking. Lots of research about why annotating is really good. Then the next thing is they're going to present their ideas to the class. So they're presenting confident, right, before they're writing. Where are they writing, you ask me? Because many people think, and many students come in and think that writing is straight away, I'm just going to write. No, it's a process. And we teach the process of writing. You have to think, you have to then analyze the information you have, especially if I'm doing something analytical. We have to look at sources. Then we discuss, if we're working in a team, will this work? Is this the way to organize my thoughts? Is this the best way to write the essay, right? So then that's the skill we're teaching. The next bit a teacher has to build into the lesson is now, this is the structure. All right, I'm just going to show you how your introduction should be written. And it may not be all done in one class, the whole essay, because writing each section of the essay takes time. So we build our lessons in such a way that we may teach you the introduction for that particular a topic, what's the best way? Let's try writing introductions. Let's then critique each other's introduction, because feedback is so important. If we mollycoddle our children, wrap them in cotton like they can't hear criticism, then it's going to be a failure on their part, because then they can't take in feedback. So, but we also learn for children to sympathize, to empathize. When you critique someone, say, what do you like about it first? What worked well? What could be better? And then they learn that skill. And this sort of teaching, skill building develops over a period of time, Christy. So that's how we do it. We are balancing skills and teaching at the same time language in our lessons. So it's not just let's write, because I don't think that produces, the child just walks away with a piece of writing with no evidence of thinking about how writing takes place. And I think that's what we need here. Our children are exposed to so much more in the world today than we were. And I think what we need to do is give them a framework for how to think, so that they can think for themselves and feel empowered, especially when they go online and there's just so many influencers and so many videos out there, right? So if we want our children to believe in themselves, like my first slide said, we actually must be there to communicate and allow them to communicate their thoughts and ideas, Christy. Now,
sorry, since we're talking about how you approach developing these skills in a lot of your classes, I thought it might be an opportune time to just put a link on chat for everyone. So if you go to your chat area, this is a link to some of Vannessa's classes. And I'm also just cognizant of time. I know we have many more slides, so I was going to stop there and ask parents for maybe some feedback in terms of whether or not they want us to go into detail in another aspect, actually. So Vannessa has a lot of kids that she teaches from international schools, and their background tends to be they're non-native English speakers at home. And these kids come to her to obviously develop leadership skills and communication skills, but also specifically how to maybe improve their English fluency, working in studying in an environment where clearly they're with other native English speakers, and also they're subject to exams and a system that requires them to converse and be able to really perform at a high level in English. Is anyone curious to hear more about that? Because we haven't spent a lot of time on that. If people could just go to the message area and let us know. Alternatively, if there are specific questions you have on some of the materials that Vannessa has been presenting, that would also be useful. So if you just go to the square that has the horizontal lines in the lower right of your screen, you click on that, you'll be brought to the message area.
Well, I would love to have questions. Questions are good because it also helps me learn what you need.
I think if no one has questions, Vannessa, why don't you touch on, I guess, some of the help that you do provide these kids that aren't native English speakers at home and yet are in the international school system, and they have a particular challenge in terms of, really developing communication skills at a very high level when they may not have as much support at home.
Yes. So students like this, they may not speak English at home, or their English would be what I call home English, just home English. And parents and students are coming because they need academic English to perform well in school. There are two different types of communication going on, the choice of words, the choice of language. And so what's really important in this is that we, especially parents, I feel that what I need to do is to communicate with the parents first, their objectives and their goals and their expectations of this child who's learning English. And this child who's grown up with another language now has to learn many other subjects in English, right? So working with the parents to see the challenges that the child may face, I feel that's one of the things I really believe in doing first. And that child spends time in school, maybe 5-6 hours of school, surrounded by English. And then he goes home, or she goes home, and that learning stops, and the child is by themselves trying to understand the academic content by themselves, and performing at a certain level can be very difficult. So what do parents do? Sometimes they put them in classes, sometimes they put them in one-to-one tutorials. And I say these can be beneficial for a child who has lots of questions, who are just learning to manage themselves, not understanding how to complete tasks, because a tutor can guide a child. Now, in terms of teaching these children, what I'm very, very mindful of is not to do the work for the child. So parents out there, you're happy to have a tutor come in, you think, phew, I don't have to work with the child in English because I can only have kind of social English. I don't have academic English, but we've got to be very mindful of the tutor that we are getting in. Because one of the things that I like to say very much so is, I'm going to move on to these slides, right? Parents sometimes think that if I buy them assessment books and get them to do, they get better in English. Get them to keep writing and recalling, rote learning, they'll get better in English. Or I just hire a native English speaker and they will pick up English from this person. Well, let me say this to you. We don't believe in just assessment books because it is just doing discrete questions. One answer is ABC. When you do things like that, the child get 10 out of 10, they are actually answering individual questions. They're not putting it all together, which is the challenge. Using it, applying it. Rote learning means I just repeat, but there's no deeper learning. Research has shown deeper learning happens when we can apply. And the third one, I'm not dissing any of your tutors out there, but what I'm saying to parents is be careful who you hire, because a person who speaks English doesn't mean they can teach. It's like me saying, I like music. I listen to music every day. I am going out there to teach music. Or you won't go for surgery if you have a doctor who's there who's never done any surgical courses, would you? So our children's future are really important, but we must understand the science behind it too. So working with children whose first language is not English is a very different way of teaching a native English speaker if school is all in English. I know these don't work because have you tried learning a second or third language? Have you tried just repeating sentences? Well, you may never use that exact sentence. Just writing it out, you may not understand the context. So what is key here, Christy, is context. When we learn anything in any language, it's about learning in context. The more children can find that it makes sense to them, and as a learner, if it makes sense to you, you can make connections with your daily life and things around you, the faster you learn. That's where deeper learning takes place. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that's very helpful. Interestingly, I do notice that even for native English speakers, I think the concept of academic English and how it impacts exam performance outside English. So for example, with maths and word problems or science, and the comprehension of the question itself can be really, really challenging. So I can see how, if you're not a native English speaker, it would just be that much more challenging still.
Exactly.
Hard enough if you're a native English speaker.
Exactly. Let me share this example, all right? So I want to share this example, this one. All right, so let's talk about this, because what you said just hit the nail on the head. When children grow up, whether they're English speakers or non-native English speakers, and they're learning English, what happens is that, for example, in school, a child comes in, tier 1 language would be a teacher in the classroom will say, all right, who were the people in today's story? Do you remember? Yes, it was Tom. Yes, there was a dog in there, Floppy and Chip. The teacher will use first tier language, people. As the child grows older, the teacher will then say, characters. Do you recognize the characters? Yes, we saw them in the other book, didn't we? Who were the characters? Which characters did you like? And finally, once they're middle school and, maybe upper elementary, middle school, you will be using third tier language. You will say protagonists. Who were the protagonists in Romeo and Juliet, for example? So we see there's a science to learning a language and how we grade language as a child grows, because we want to use language that a child can connect with. So when you talked about science and math like this, we start small. Can you guess how many buttons there are in this? Can you estimate? And as a child goes older, we want to use the scientific word. Let's hypothesize. Will this bar of soap sink or float in the water? And Chrissy, there are many examples like this. For example, words like factors and product. We know in the marketing world, a product is something you buy or sell, right? But in But in other aspects, in biology, a factor is what causes a disease. And in the historical sense, a factor is examples that contribute to a war or a government being overthrown. So what you said is right there. Academic English it can be challenging because it goes beyond just the language that a child speaks at home every day. It encompasses understanding the very subject-specific language and the way to present that language, right? So can I do a quick one with you, Christy?
Yes.
If you were putting on your hat as a artist, let's talk about the Hong Kong national flower, the bauhinia, right?
Yes.
Say, imagine you're an artist. How would you describe the flower? You might say,
I would say the certain number of, I guess, petals on it. Mm-hmm. I would talk about how, I guess, the color. I would talk about,
yes.
I don't know, that's kind of it when I think about that.
Yeah, I think that's it, the color, the way it looks, right?
Yes. But I'm not a visual artist.
It's all right. But I'm asking you to pull upon your own experience. If I were to look at it as a historian, what would I talk about? I'll talk about probably when did it become the national flower? Why was it chosen to be the national flower? Yeah. So these are called language of subjects. And so as English is a second language learner goes through school, they have to pick up the language from each subject area. Mm-hmm. And that makes it even more challenging because not are they only learning social English, now they have another level of English called academic English in which to produce essays, to debate in class, and to sound like they've done their homework. So, yeah. So I think to sum up today's session about leadership skills, sorry, where did I hear? To sum up today's session, we looked at all these things that a leader would gain from once they have these leadership skills, like resilience, integrity, taking initiative, working as a team, having empathy, being confident as a person, being responsible for your actions, and finally, thinking critically. So you actually reflect on what happened, why it happened, and is that information reliable? So what I'm saying is that the bottom line to most things is to communicate with our children, teach our children good ways of communicating, and then from there we can build in, like, you know, into a little pot, we can put more skills in for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vannessa. Could I just ask the parents that are still on the call if anyone has any questions they'd like Vannessa to address? If you could just go to the chat area, which is the square that has horizontal lines, the lower right-hand side of your screen, you should be able to type in a message.
While they're typing in, I'm going to say this. Parents, when you're there, we hope you were listening on the call, because one of the things we want our children to do is we want to model for them active listening and asking questions. So I'd love to have your questions if you have any.
Definitely. We have a few lovely comments from moms. Charlene, that was really comprehensive. Winkies, thanking you. Fionn says learning like-minded persons is very joyful, easier and faster. So it sounds like people don't have any questions. So Vannessa, thank you so much for your time and walking us through how to help support our kids in developing leadership and communication skills. If any of the parents do want to sign up and be made aware of other parent events and expert webinars and things like that we hold, I'm just attaching a link here. You can create an account, it's free. Otherwise, we will be circulating a recap of this webinar and we will circulate Vannessa's materials. Yes. So we have one question. Thank you for the inspiring talk from FU. How can we help children's academic English at home?
Yes, so one of the things that we can do is if you look at their schoolwork and if you sit down and look at the way the teacher is asking your child to write a particular story, a particular essay, look at the structure. You need to understand that for your child first. And then there are also wonderful YouTube videos out there that can be useful for a parent to look at how our essay history essays written, or what are the expectations for biology essays. These can help us as parents understand. But of course, if we are not into academic reading of science and history, that can be challenging. My suggestion, always, after you do your own research, approach the class teachers. They're always there to support you and help you. I know many parents, because they've come to me too, to say, I don't want to talk to a teacher. I don't know what to say. And I help them. We work through together, formulating questions so that they too are empowered to go and speak to the teachers and ask them for support. The teacher is there to support the child, but they're happy to help you too in the process. But should you need any more ideas, suggestions, and want to communicate with me, at the end of the slide, I have my contact information. So please do email me, and I'm happy to have a conversation and take this further.
We have a comment, support our children to do their own research. Yes, I definitely agree with that one. Actually, one little thing I try to do with my own kids, which I found quite useful, particularly in relation to maths word problems, which are really tricky. I try to speak in maths terminology, and then I try to speak in just plain English. So for example, I'll say, okay, this question, if I was to describe what they're trying to get you to do in plain English, I would say lots of something, or I wouldn't use terms like multiply or divide or add or subtract. I try to use more common terms. And so they try to link, what we use in plain English with actual mathematical terms.
Yes.
And try to go back and forth between the different terminologies.
Yes, that's good, Christy, because if a class is highly with a lot of English as second language learners in it, teachers usually do that. They will have little displays to say like plus, because plus is an easy one for most students. 1 + 1, they know that. Then we have add, addition. All these words will have to be built in their vocabulary. And teachers who are experienced in working with students like this know how to tier the language, to grade it, so the child becomes familiar with these words too. Oh, and some schools do send children home with a packet of vocabulary words so the parents can see what they've learned and know that they can use those terms as well.
Yeah.
Can I just say something, Christy? Someone put here, support our children to do their own research. Now, if your children are older, and I've guided children who are maybe in year 8, 9, and above, I do suggest certain sites, and I say, go to it, have a look, tell me what structure did this particular site talk about when you have to write your literature essay. Then they come back, and then I look at the structure, say, is this what you found? Okay, then I give them a sample essay, and then I say to them, can you find all those elements in this essay? So that's what you do to reinforce at the same time. I find that this research can be useful for older students so they understand, because we have to be mindful. Sometimes schools set structures in a specific way, and they don't want the children to venture too far away from it, because certain things can have lots of conversation again with the teacher is important.
We have one more question. Any recommended reading for our children or parents?
Oh my gosh, loads.
I'm sure.
So, what you can do is, please email me, and I have all this for you. I'm happy to share with you more recommended reading for various ages and what you as a parent could read too, because I've read that and it's enlightening to just learn more about parenting.
Vannessa, could I suggest maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing your top 3 for parents and your top 3 for kids of different age groups with us after this call, and then we can include that in our blog and our recap that we send around to people.
Yes, will do. Read along books, independent books, those are great. Yes.
Okay. And we have a question just asking for your email. Do you want to type that into the message chat?
Yes, I can type it in now. Actually, you know what will be easier? So me typing. I will go to the slide and share this, and maybe just put it there. That's my email address. If you're got a phone, that might work. And this might
Vannessa at Cascade Train Teach Learn.com.
Yes.
Actually, contact them.
Yeah. And yes, I'll be happy to connect with anybody who has questions and jump on the call if we need to for a 30-minute call.
Great. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Vannessa, for such an interesting webinar. I definitely learned some practical tips for my own kids.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to all the parents for joining us as well. I hope you also found the webinar very useful.
I hope so. Yes. Thank
Great.
you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.